Okay, ladies and gentlemen, now we take a time zone of exactly 30 minutes as we disperse for lunch. And if you guys get confused to what topics are happening in respective tracks, please do have the look at the LED wall, which is displayed right outside the door for the updated schedule. And we'll see you back exactly at sharp 2 p.m. Enjoy your lunch and happy networking. Thank you. Welcome back. Good afternoon, everybody. And this session is going to be very challenging for you because they've just had their heavy meals, so you'll have to take care of your session now. Welcome back, everybody. Moving on to the next speaker, the next session, we have with us here Mr. Sanjay Chandru, the Director, WW Development, Support, Offering Management, Enterprise DevOps, IBM. A quick introduction about the gentleman. He's dynamic and result-oriented leader with 20 plus years of successful product management, technical software sales, and development experience, driving bleeding-edge DevOps innovation on the mainframe through enterprise-wide standardization. His topic for today is driving enterprise-wide CI/CD across hybrid cloud and IBM Z. Let's give it up, ladies and gentlemen, with a big, big round of applause for Mr. Sanjay Chandru here with us. And of course, for the lady here as well, let's give it up. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Everybody can hear me? Okay, so I'm always happy to be the first speaker right after lunch. It's a really easy task to keep you guys awake. I'm not really sure yet, so I got some help. We're going to actually talk about DevOps, our point of view. I'm going to set the stage, and then I'm going to turn it over to Rosalind Radcliffe, who, if you've attended yesterday's session, you certainly want to hear more from her. We're going to make this a fun interactive experience, and we're actually going to do a demo of a cloud-native development experience, if you will, and we're going to show the Microsoft Azure DevOps pipeline working with Z, right, working with the mainframe. So it's going to be an interesting session. Rosalind's going to do a demo. I'm going to set the stage. I'm going to move out of the way, right? All right, so what is our POV on DevOps, right? What do we think DevOps is? So DevOps is all about enabling continuous improvement based on continuous feedback. It's a very simplistic view, but that kind of nets out what DevOps is in a sense. And the key here is that while it sounds simple, it's far more profound when you actually want to implement and you want to adopt and you want to transform, right? So you can see the infinite loop here, and that kind of represents the continuous feedback and the continuous improvement and the continuous iteration aspects of DevOps itself, right? So having said that, when it comes to the mainframe itself and Z, the value prop is really strong for DevOps. And we're focusing on some key areas, right? We're focusing on enterprise-wide standardization. So what do I mean by enterprise-wide standardization? What I mean by that is we want to make development for the mainframe unremarkable. We want to make it something that you would do on any other platform and nothing that is special and different, right? So that is really key. So if you're doing, let's say, development for Azure or for whatever else, right, AWS, you should be able to leverage those skills to also develop for the mainframe. And you should be able to leverage the mainframe as a first-class part of a CI/CD pipeline that is enterprise-wide. You should be able to leverage the tools and the processes across the enterprise. And that means that it cuts across all platforms and all flavors of the cloud, right? Including Azure or IBM Cloud or AWS. So it's all about enterprise-wide standardization, leveraging open source. So open source is hot, open source is interesting, and open source is something that more and more of our customers want to adopt, and we want to make it really easy for them to adopt open source in a supported manner, because these are large enterprises that are on the mainframe. So we want to provide them with the ability to adopt open source tools confidently and then standardize across the enterprise when it comes to these tools and the resulting processes that allow them to transform, right? So that's really enterprise-wide standardization. And to do that, you need to have modern tools and modern development practices. For example, modern IDEs. Let's just take the example of bring your own IDE, which is becoming really popular now, right? So you should be able to bring any IDE that you want to use and do your daily development. Day in the life of a developer should be focused on whatever it is that he wants to use from a tooling perspective to deliver on the code that he needs to deliver on. And so that means you need to have modern development practices that span not just the distributed platforms or cloud, but also the mainframe itself, the Z platform. And once you have modern development practices, then you can automate everything. So the other piece of this that is really key is automating your build, your deploy, your test. And there are a couple of reasons why it's extremely important that you automate everything. The first thing is you want to remove redundant manual processes, repetitive processes that could introduce risk and error, right, as you do your development. So that's the first thing. The second thing is you're only as fast as the slowest piece of whatever it is that you're working on. And if you automate, then you're removing some bottlenecks, right? And specifically in the if you have to take testing, for example, if you shift left, then you're catching issues earlier, your software quality goes up, and you're also removing bottlenecks and speeding up the entire life cycle, your delivery life cycle. So automation is key, right? And finally, from a skills perspective, one of the big challenges for the mainframe has been skills. So there's always this worry that, hey, this archaic old stuff, how are we going to maintain this? How are we going to continue to keep things going? And if you were to step back and put things in perspective, 23 out of the 25 largest banks on this planet have mainframes. And there are 250 billion lines of COBOL code, okay? It's huge. It pretty much runs the world. So you need to be able to leverage all these assets that you have, but also do new development and adopt these disruptive technologies and so on and so forth. And so we have to have a bridge that allows all these new skills that are out in the marketplace to be leveraged in the context of developing for the mainframe using modern development practices, enterprise-wide standardization, and automation, right? So I'm going to turn it over to Rosalind, but we're going to show you how it's done today, right? So I've said all of this stuff, but are we putting our money where our mouth is? Can you actually do any of this on the mainframe? Is the mainframe still old and boring, right? And we're going to show that it isn't, and you can do everything that I just said you could. And Rosalind is actually going to show it, so I'm not doing all the really hard work. But Rosalind, over to you.
Thank you. I have my own mic.
You got your own mic.
Yes, I've got my own mic, so I don't have to worry about holding one. So I will be showing a demo, but before I do that, I want to show this example integrated pipeline. In this example, we chose Jenkins and GitHub as the capability that we were using for the pipeline. And so it was an example and a way of doing development. In this, we also are using an Eclipse-based environment, so I'm using IDZ or ZOpen development as my IDE. This is one choice, one way of working. We've been working very hard to allow you to have multiple choices in the environment, however. And so what I'm going to do is do a live demo. Now, yesterday I spent all day standing on the stage just talking. Today I get to do what I really like to do, which is show something, and show something fun. And so what I'm going to do is show the Microsoft Azure DevOps pipeline with COBOL in it. Okay, now this sounds a little strange. The pipeline is running in Azure. Yes, it is. It's in Microsoft's cloud. And it is talking to a ZOS hiding behind a bunch of IBM firewalls. It's not just IBM's firewall, it's a bunch of development firewalls too, because it's a development machine. It's not one sitting out on the internet, it really is a secure z/OS environment. Now I will admit, I am using IBM's SSO, so our installation, our access to Azure, so it's not just a public, I went out and got a login, it really is the IBM account. So it is like you would have in your organization an account that you would have access to the Azure environment and allow you to do this. In order to do this, the one piece I need is a build tool. I need a capability that allows me to build COBOL or PL1 or assembler when I'm using an open tool chain. In this case, we have IBM dependency-based build, which is really groovy, running on z/OS. So it is consistent with a Gradle build. It fits into pipelines very well. I do have Urban Code Deploy for the deployment, so I can actually deploy on the system and get it running in the environment. And I'm using VS Code as the developer environment, because why not? As Sanjay said, bring your own IDE. Now let's see if the magic's going to work today or not. And of course, the first magic that doesn't work is the display. So give me a second. It always happens. The demo itself, let's see, mirror. Thank you. The demo itself, here we go. It's in dark mode, of course. The first time I actually saw dark mode, I will have to make this comment. The first time I saw dark mode and I had everybody telling me this was great and wonderful, I asked a kid, why are you trying to go back to a 3270? Because yeah, okay, never mind. So this is COBOL, but if you look at my screen a little closer, you'll notice, yes, it's COBOL, but it's got the program flow over here, so as I flow through it, it's got information about the program below it, things like the cyclomatic complexity. I can look at all the metrics about my code. I can get code information. I have an editor that gives me code completion. It's a normal editor you would expect in VS Code, except it understands COBOL. And not just COBOL, but COBOL with kicks, with DB2, with all of the rest of the syntax you would need in order to do your development. You'll also notice that my source control is Git, and if you can see down at the bottom, which you might not be able to see, but it says AZDBB down in the corner. That means I'm hooked up to the Azure repo sitting in the environment, and just to show I'm not kidding, so if you know Azure DevOps, that's where it is, Azure DevOps, here we go. I have my area, I have my repo that has a whole bunch of code in it. This is a mortgage application that runs, it's a Kix COBOL DB2 mortgage application, and I've got the code sitting out here in the environment. Yes, this browser and environment doesn't understand COBOL, so it looks like just plain text. There are ways to solve that too, but in this demo, I'm not going to edit the code here, so I don't have to worry about it. This, you'll notice, I actually have a couple of different branches in my environment. I have my master branch, which is the one I'm looking at here because, well, that was easy. But I also have two demo branches. You notice I can't spell the same way twice, so I did a capital and a lowercase. But okay, I've got two branches out there that I'm working with. And in my Azure world, I'm working on my demo branch because I shouldn't work on master. I should do the work and then do a pull request. So I'm working on my demo branch, and I'll show my working there. And I have a pipeline. And here's my pipeline. Now, there are a couple of people that work in this environment, because both of us like to do demos on this system. And so you can see there are a bunch of builds that have been run. I will comment, it's very friendly. Look over here, you can see a whole bunch of builds that have been done on master. They were all done by Nelson, who hasn't quite learned you're not supposed to work on master. And then you have me, that's on demo branch, but okay, we'll get past that. So this is just Azure DevOps, right? I mean, it's their environment, it's, you know, whatever. I just decided to do this. The most important thing about this is it does not matter. It does not matter which pipeline you want to use, you can do the same thing. Now in this wonderful COBOL editor, if I don't know COBOL, so let's say I don't know COBOL at all, and I want to be a little careful because I actually don't want to break this code. And I'm good at breaking code, so let me go someplace I can't break. If I don't know the code, it's going to very carefully, if I don't know COBOL, which, you know, you come out of college, what's the chances you're going to know COBOL? Somewhere near 0, right? Okay. But if you look at this, I've got a full completion for me, so I don't have to worry about it. It will tell me when I screw up things. So if I want to do something really silly and do a, let me actually do it somewhere it's not totally wrong, MOV. It's telling me it's wrong. It's going to give me information. I get all my errors. The other thing that I like to say about COBOL for all the people who say the skills shortage exists, it looks an awful lot like English. Move, add, evaluate, you know, I'm sorry, is that hard to do? No. But it's in VS Code here, so any change I want to make is in a familiar environment. I get to do the work the same way I do any other work. And you will notice the one thing that you can notice at the top of this screen, I got a lot of new changes. Yeah, new change. I change comments for demos. I may be crazy enough to do a live demo, but I'm not crazy enough to change real code, okay? Yeah, sorry. So I've made a change in the code, and just like any other code that I do, it's now come up as code that I can stage and then I can commit. Yeah, you know, I could type too. Yeah, I'll even label what it's for. So I'm going to commit that code. So I've committed it locally. Here it is. I can't not done anything with it, so I actually need to push it up so that I can build this code. So I'm going to push the code. As a developer, I'm doing things that I know that are friendly, that are just like any other environment, any other code I would be writing, and it's gone off and pushed this environment up to the build process. And so it's kicked off, yeah, that's the last one I ran. It's kicked off a build in the environment, and so here I can go and see the new build that has been kicked off. So it's running a new build. Just like normal, when I do a commit, it pushes it off. I could look at the source code and I could do a pull request now, all I want to, so it could get merged into master just like I would do anything else. But in this case, I have it running this build, and this one will run, and while that one is running, I'm going to show this one because it's already finished. Like any other process, when I do a build, it's running a set of steps in a build environment. Well, in this case, that build environment happens to be sitting on a ZOS system that you might not know anything about or want to know how to get to, right? You don't want to go log into the Z system and understand it. So you can easily see what has happened in the environment. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to do anything. I get the information. You can see I have cloned my code directly from the Git server directly to my ZOS environment. So I did a from the server directly to this environment. You'll notice Actually, I will pull that out. You'll notice that I'm using SSH from the Azure agent to do this process. So right now, as of today, the Azure agent, the build agent, does not run on ZOS. I will admit I've looked at trying to do that, and I have not succeeded. It would take a lot more work than I think we're going to be able to do. And since I can run the agent anywhere and just SSH into the ZOS box anyway, it'll let me build it and do the build, and it doesn't matter. So I've built this process so that the agent is running somewhere. And in an environment like this, the agent has to run inside your corporate firewall because it's going to talk to your ZOS environment. And so it's sitting there, and it's running, and it's talking to the system, and so it's doing that. After it does the clone, it's doing a nice build, and in the build, it does all the steps necessary to do the compile, give me all the logs, give me all the listings, and then it goes through and the Azure process kicks off the UCD process. So it can do the deployment in the environment. And so I have that information. It can process through, and I can look at this deployment, and I can get to the version. Except I can never, ever get it to actually go, so let's do it this way. It's a demo, right? It's a live demo. Just go. Thank you. So when it created the version in here, it created a version in an environment that's easy to understand, easy to interact with, whether or not you know anything about ZOS files or not, whether or not you know how to interact with them. But it also has done something to give me information about No, I'm still connected. As I said, live demos are always fun. But part of the problem is the screen flashing, so that's not my fault. The what? It didn't do that yesterday. Oh, every now and then it would, but right now it's the screen flashing. So I'm just going to keep talking, and I'll talk through what you were seeing. What it was doing, okay, it just doesn't like me, is what it is. I now have my version, and these are actually the files that have passed through. These are the actual information, so I have all the details of what was actually part of this build. So for those audit and traceability capabilities, I have the full linkage and the full set of information. Questions before I keep going? Because I hate that. In this one, I am using the Azure DevOps pipeline. I have an Azure DevOps pipeline agent running inside my IBM firewall because I need it to be able to access my systems. It's running inside the firewall, and it can talk to the Azure system, and it can talk to my system. And it's kicking off the process. So there's no, in this example, there is no Jenkins. In this particular pipeline, no. In this particular pipeline, we have not added ZUnit, but I could have. So I could have run ZUnit in this pipeline as part of this pipeline process, because there is nothing about me running from this environment that wouldn't allow me to run them. We do not have the ZUnit capability in VS Code at this time? Yes. But once I've built a unit test, I'm building a unit test in COBOL, or I'm building a unit test in PL1. So once I've built the test, I could modify it in VS Code. So let's take an example. What I really expect from a unit test standpoint is you're going to generate the unit test the first time. You really are. You're going to go through the wizard. You're going to generate the unit test the first time because you don't want to have to create all those stubs manually. You don't want to have to do all the, how do I stub out kicks and DB2 and all that other stuff. It's all going to be done for you, and you'll have this unit test. After that, now I have COBOL. I can add to that testing this way. I don't have to regenerate it every time. In fact, I don't want to regenerate it every time. I can just edit the COBOL in the environment. And so I've got that option. The other thing you have is, since I will have generated the unit test, it will normally be part of this build process, so it would have just been kicked off. And the place it would have been kicked off in this process actually is in this DBB build. So in this build process we have here, this build process kicking this off, it could have easily done the unit tests as part of it. Part of the reason we don't have unit tests in here is just because it's shocking enough to have Azure doing COBOL, but yes. The Azure pipeline is actually talking to my ZOS environment, and in my ZOS environment, it is doing the compilation on the real machine. And so the build is running on a ZOS environment, and if you look up here, right there, that SSH connection to TV, not that I'm supposed to show host names, but okay, TVT, whatever, right, that one up there, that is a ZOS instance running in IBM behind the firewall. So that's my ZOS environment. Yeah, just forget the name, but that's okay. That's my ZOS, and one of my many ZOS environments that we've got running, and that is where I'm doing the build. So the entire build process is being done in that environment. So I'm doing a normal compile. I'm doing a normal link, just like anything else. Other questions? It really doesn't want to get to there. No. Every now and then there are places I can't get to behind firewalls when I'm out here, so I will keep trying. Other questions about what we've done in this environment, or questions about how this worked, just to make sure it's completely clear. The other thing that I just did in VS Code, and what we want to do with VS Code is, since that is a familiar environment, we want to make it as easy from a developer standpoint to have the information at their hands that they need. And you'll notice I have a set of information and statistics I can have about the program in addition to the basic metrics I had before. So I have a set of metrics that are being generated from the program based on understanding the program. The other thing that is important to recognize in the background, this program used a set of copybooks. So as part of that build process, the dependency understanding tool, part of DBB, took the correct copybooks and copied them off to do this build, which is how it could do its build. So all the dependency information about all your COBOL programs, even if they're very complex dependencies, multi-stage dependencies, copybook, including copybook, like we've seen a few times, all of that would be included in this environment. Other questions? Does this make sense? Does it make sense? We got the fact that this is just Azure DevOps. Now, the pipeline more often that we demo, we just like to have fun with this one, is actually a Jenkins with GitHub. We also have a version of Jenkins with GitLab running in the environment. We have people who are using GitLab with GitLab CI, doing the process the same way we've done here with Azure DevOps. So you have lots of choices. There's also a way you can go play yourself. So there's a Z trial. If you want to go play with this in the Jenkins kind of environment, you can go play yourself and see it by searching for IBM Z trial and GitDBB. You will find it, and you can go play and experiment yourself. And I know we're just about out of time, so I want to be cognizant of that. Did we want to ask questions of the audience? Or did we want to ask any final questions? Yeah, but they're going to want to ask these questions. Yes. Yeah. Two questions. Okay, I get to ask them. I thought time was up. I get to ask 2 questions.
Yes.
Okay, what's the 2 questions?
2 questions from the presentation you've done now.
Yes, 2 questions for the presentation. Sanjay, think of the first question.
All right, so I need a mic.
No.
So what did we show? What pipeline did we use here? Hey.
So I'm going to say, right there. The first one to raise their hand, not the first one to yell, but the first one to raise their hand. Come on. Okay. And he did an easy one. So the second one.
You always have to make it easy. You got to draw people in. You know what I mean? So you asked.
Yeah, I got my own mic. The second question. What language was the build tool provided in?
Did you cover that?
Yes, I did. Well, right back there, yes.
All the way back
right there. Groovy, very good. Come on up, both of you. Come on. Oh. And we have gifts for both of you. One and two. Thank
Let's
you.
give it up, ladies and gentlemen. A very hearty congratulations to both of you. We request Mark Hornbeek to kindly join us on stage to hand over the certificate and memento to Sanjay, please. Yeah, that's the jingle. A polite way of telling, time's up and you're going to go off the stage now, yes.
I wasn't very polite yesterday. I kept playing in the background as she was presenting.
Thank you so much, Sanjay. Thank you so much, ma'am, for being a part of DOIS and enriching our knowledge towards this. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So thanks for doing all the hard work.
Yes.